Hi, I'm Kylie and welcome to this week's episode of Money, 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 where we cut out the jargon and talk about all things financial. Hi and welcome back to Money, Money, Money. Today I have with me Mark Woods from Neo Financial Solutions and we're going to be discussing personal insurances. Welcome, Mark.
Hi, Kylie.
Let's start with the big one. What's life insurance and why do I need it?
Well, look, I'll probably start first and preface my answer with a distinction between the two types of insurances that we try and deal with in the marketplace. Personal insurance, which life insurance falls under, and general insurance, which is your car, boat and house and contents insurance. So we're licensed for personal insurance, and that basically life insurance falls under that. So life insurance is basically insurance that covers you in the event of death. It's a harsh term to mention, but that's really what it's called. So that's what it's for. It provides a lump sum to the beneficiary, whoever is the beneficiary of that policy, in the event of the owner's passing. So that's really what life insurance is.
Okay, so I understand if I'm a married couple or in a de facto relationship and I've got children that
Yes.
I would need it because we've probably got a house mortgage and car, whatever. But we get asked often, if I'm single, why do I need it? If I die, it doesn't really matter. Mum and dad or whoever will sell my house. Why do I need it?
Well, look, that's a good point. For a lot of people, that's the answer that they give. But insurance is there to provide for risk. And the risk is that, okay, your parents could be left with, if it was a single person, your parents could be left with some debt. If the house doesn't sell enough to cover the debt that it carries or the other personal debts, there'll be funeral expenses, there'll be other expenses that come out of a person passing. So having a sum of insurance takes that stress away, it takes that liability away and allows then for people to grieve properly without worrying about having to sell assets and having to sell property to cover people's debts. Because when you die, as you know, your debts become due.
That's actually a great point about it does remove the stress from your loved ones even when you're single.
Yeah.
Now, is this the same as total permanent disability? It's known as TPD.
Yep.
But how are they different?
Okay, TPD is once again a lump sum of money, or can be turned into an income stream. But basically, it's a sum of money provided once you've been diagnosed as not being able to return to work in the course of either your duties or what you're qualified and trained for, or that's called an own occupation, or an any occupation. So you're not able to return and do any type of work. So basically you're unable to work at all. Once you've been diagnosed as being totally and permanently disabled, that money will be released or paid to you.
Yeah.
And that, once again, this type of insurance can be held inside superannuation, so it can only have an any occupation definition because it must also align with the government's or the superannuation's industry's definition of total and permanent disablement to allow a release of that money. If it's held just by you paying for it personally, it would automatically be released to the individual, so it doesn't have to go through the superannuation system.
Which way is better?
Well, to be honest, it depends. If it's about cost as well, because look, total and permanent disablement and all insurances cost money. If you can afford to pay for it outside of superannuation, that is probably a good method, because doing it that way, you can actually have what they call an own occupation. So it's your training, your profession. You can be have that as a definition. If you are unable to do that work, then you could be paid out. Under superannuation, there are laws covering when money is allowed to be released from super. And the definition of total and permanent disablement in that arena can only be own occupation. The government has recently changed that, which means that it falls into alignment with the superannuation regulations about when money can be released. So in my mind, that's a personal opinion. I would rather have my total and permanent disablement outside of superannuation.
Sure.
So that there would be no problem with my definition. So I would be trained as a planner. If I couldn't be a planner anymore, then I would be classed as being totally and permanently disabled from that occupation. Now, once again, as you well know, it's about cost and it's about affordability. So that's the real risk, or that's the real, strategy, is to be able to blend the cost of the insurance with a client being able to afford it.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. Just hearing you explain that actually really drives home to me is why when you're doing this you do need to see a financial planner, because it is far more complex than what a lot of people lead you to believe, isn't it?
Yeah, and it's actually getting more complex as the years go on and the legislation changes.
Yeah, and that's the problem. Legislation changes all the time and it's difficult to keep up with. So leaving that alone, we often hear about you should have income protection. So what's the difference between, I know that you get salary continuance and you get income protection. What's the difference between the two?
Once again, more industry jargon.
I love industry jargon. Oh.
So income protection, as it says, is protecting your income. And salary continuance is exactly the same. It's continuation of your salary. And that usually, they use that definition or that term within superannuation. It's called salary continuance. Outside of superannuation, it's called income protection. But it's really just a name. They do the same thing. They have different structures inside super to outside, and depending who the insurer is. But they are basically essentially the same terms.
Are any of those tax deductible? Because something here is telling me something's tax deductible.
Well, look, all insurance premiums paid within inside superannuation are tax deductible to the superannuation trustee. And so salary continuance within super would be tax deductible to the trustee of the super fund, which would not be the individual. They're just paying the premiums. If you pay it from your own after-tax cash flow, then it becomes a tax deduction to you, because when you receive the income on a claim, they'll take tax from it. So they allow you to take a tax deduction along the way as well.
Okay, that's a good explanation of it. So leaving that and moving on, I hear about critical illness and trauma cover. Is that the same as the TPD we spoke about earlier?
No, slightly different. TPD talks about total and permanent disablement. Critical illness and trauma are basically similar terms. And basically the concept of critical illness and trauma is that they will pay a lump sum of money on diagnosis of a condition that's listed in the product disclosure statement. So in the PDS they call it, of the insurance company. So for example, heart attack, there are different levels, stroke, losing a limb, those sorts of things, kidney disease or cancer. These are terms and specific definitions and diagnoses that would be listed in the PDS or the product disclosure statement, should I say, and then on the client proving that that's happened to them, they would have a sum of money released to them. Now, trauma and critical illness cannot be held inside superannuation. That is one restriction. It has to be held outside superannuation. So.
Okay. Now, I see a lot of them on TV.
Yeah.
Quick ads, or sometimes they're long ads, just advertising, call us now, you can have immediate cover, you're going to have... they're obviously cheaper.
Yes.
But what's the main difference between those?
Okay.
Because they're bringing great exposure about you need these things, but what's the difference?
Okay, so if we look at it this way, so there are X amount of insurance companies in Australia, they provide these products. What they also provide is some of these products that are cut down, what we call cut down versions. So they've stripped out of them what we in term, and people would understand, bells and whistles. The bells and whistles, or the fruit that you get with like a new car. You want the extras.
Yep.
The retail insurance that most planners provide have the ones with all the extras. So you're getting the spoiler, you're getting the flared tyres, you're getting all of that. You're getting the extras with that. Whereas a lot of the ones they sell over the phone or through the TV, they are the same product, but they have all those extras stripped out, and it's purely just the death cover with no rehabilitation cover, for example, with income protection, or no physiotherapy and those sorts of things that they can add as bells and whistles. So indexation, if trauma reinstatement or TPD reinstatement after a claim, those sorts of things.
Okay, so it's a bit of a minefield, isn't it? Really, insurances.
Is.
How do I know which ones are the most important to me, or which are the ones that I should actually be thinking of getting? I might only be able to afford one or two. Yeah. How do you navigate which ones are the most important?
Well, similar like we talked about previously when we were talking about a financial plan, that's really what the planner's role is, to sit down with you and look at your situation and help you assess the risk that you're facing. So with debt, you might have debt, you might have education costs for your children that you want to make sure that they're provided for. It's a replacing of a standard of living that you're currently enjoying. That's what a planner's role is, to work out, well, if something happened to you, who would fund this? How would you live? and then really put contingency plans like risk management plans in place saying, okay, if you pass away, this lump sum of money will pay your debt and you can invest the rest of it for an income for your family or to provide for education for your children. So these are the things that a planner will help you work through. The problem is sometimes people think, I only need X amount, I don't want any more. And then they leave themselves exposed. There's still some risk that's exposed. So the planner's role is to help them cover those risks or take them to as much cover as they can afford and still have some money to deal with the things that happen after that issue or that event has happened.
Well, just before we wrap up, there was one thing that you mentioned in there was talking about education for children. And one of the common things I've heard for many years is that people will talk about their life insurance or their trauma and they'll go, but I'm only going to cover the main breadwinner. I don't need to worry. If we talk husband and wife in this case without being biased, but the wife's at home, she's looking after the children, she's not an income producer, so I don't need to cover her, but that's not correct.
No, that's actually a big fallacy and it's a big mistake that people will make. The wife being at home looking after the children, if we look at the traditional style of family, if you had to replace that person to look after your child, you'd be paying well in excess of what you pay as a wage to someone. So people thinking that, well, what will I do? Well, if the breadwinner passes away, someone else will have to go to work, so who will look after that child?
Yeah.
The child still needs to be looked after. The child still needs to go through education. The child needs clothes, all of that sort of stuff. So it's a very incorrect assumption to make that, oh, I need to cover the main breadwinner. The person that's actually looking after the child is probably just as important, if not more important, than the main breadwinner in some situations.
Yeah, so we could probably talk about that for a long time.
True.
And we'll get Mark back again to come and talk to us more in depth about insurances. But for now, thanks, Mark. That was really interesting. Hope that cleared things up. And we'll see you next time on Money, Money, Money.
Thanks very much.
Thanks for watching Money, Money, Money. If you liked this video, hit the red subscribe button. If you'd like to know more information, you can follow us on Facebook or go to our website, linked in the information box below.